The phone number is, what is it? 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. I'd like to give a warm shout out to whoever got my bacon, egg, and cheese biscuit at Chick-fil-A this morning, because I got their sausage biscuit. And what a weird way to order your sausage biscuit, too. Whoever ordered the sausage biscuit, instead of ordering a sausage biscuit, ordered a sausage, egg, and cheese biscuit with no egg and no cheese. That's how they actually put the order in. You can just get the sausage biscuit. Just full disclosure, whoever got my bacon, egg, and cheese, I didn't get the cheese, but I got extra bacon. And you saw it was for Erick Erickson because it puts your name on it. And you got mine. And yours was a walk-up counter order, and I got yours, so I have no idea who your name is. But when you open it and there was no cheese, but there was extra bacon, I'm talking to you and no one else in the audience right now. I know you're listening. You can actually get just a sausage biscuit. You don't have to get a sausage, egg, and cheese without the egg and cheese. You can do that. I got home. I was like, what is this? Oh, well, it was too late to go back. It was a fine sausage biscuit from Chick-fil-A, touched by God, as always, with Chick-fil-A. Now we have to get into the news. I'm sure you all wanted to know about my dilemmas. The Babylon Bee is running a story. I personally find it hysterical. The headline is All-Star Game moved from Atlanta to Uyghur prison camp yard. Spokespeople for Major League Baseball announced today that the All-Star Game this summer will be moved from Atlanta due to its egregious voting laws to a Uyghur prison camp yard where there aren't any bad voting laws at all because no one can vote. The game will be held in the spacious prison yard, which features a tall barbed wire fence and a modest outfield. The venue features lots of free labor, so every roll from the ball boys to the concession vendors won't cost the league a dime. In fact, the workers are already happily chalking the baselines and tending the grass, since if they don't, they'll all be murdered. We must move the All-Star Game to a place that shares our values, says Major League Baseball Commissioner Rob Manfred. This prison yard is absolutely perfect. They're giving it to us absolutely free. What a friend we have in communist China. This should be one of the most exciting games in recent memory, as any player who fails to stand for the Chinese Pledge of Allegiance or points to God to thank him for a great play will be shot on sight. However, the game will be limited to just 3 extra innings, as Disney needs the space immediately after to film a documentary on Georgia's bad voting laws. The Babylon Bee. Rob Manfred, the commissioner, is coming under attack. He won't give up his membership to Augusta National. He wants to virtue signal and move the game out of Georgia, but he is insistent on keeping his Augusta National membership. This actually came up this morning with Joe Scarborough on MSNBC with Michael Steele.
Yeah, and Michael Steele, far be it from me to say positive things about little stunts that Marco Rubio pulls. I think he embarrasses himself a lot. In this case, he's got the MLB commissioner dead to center. And he's got him that way because he says, you can't play an all-star game in Atlanta, Georgia, because, well, that would be helping the state of Georgia, and you think they're doing horrible things, and so you want to you want to get events out of Georgia? Okay. Aren't you a member of Augusta National? Actually, that's a pretty good point. If Georgia's not a good enough state to do business in, then certainly is not a state that you would want to fly down to and spend your money and be a member of Augusta National. So should we expect that the commissioner of Major League Baseball is going to be giving up his membership at Augusta National?
No, no, he won't.
But you got to admit, it's a good point. I mean, you read that letter, you go, I
don't see it.
Well, checkmate.
I don't see it. I think a business decision versus a personal choice. I think a corporate decision in which, I don't think the citizens care whether or not the CEO of a company has an association with a golf club. And
Wait. The commissioner of baseball made it a moral case. The baseball commissioner made the decision to leave Georgia a moral case. If it's a moral case, those morals, you, the commissioner, reflect the moral values. So if it's a moral case to leave Georgia and the All-Star game, it should be a moral case for him to abandon his membership at Augusta National. I am happy to take it off his hands. I will gladly take it. I'm sure I can find a way for my accountant to make it a business expense. I will gladly take off his hands his membership at Augusta National. He should certainly get rid of it if he's going to move the All-Star game. And they're moving it to Colorado, by the way. Colorado has mail-in voting, but Colorado actually allows in-person voting as well, where you can drop off your ballot. They give fewer days for in-person mail-in balloting voting than Georgia does. So early voting in Colorado is 15 days. In Georgia, it's a minimum of 17 days and a possible 19 days if counties go with Sunday voting. So there you have it. Fine. By the way, Jen Psaki, the White House press secretary, is walking back Joe Biden, saying that baseball should abandon Georgia. The president of the United States last week said that baseball should leave. He said pretty clearly that if Georgia was going to pass this law, that baseball needed to move the All-Star game. He said that you gotta push back on this sort of stuff, and he decided that they needed to go away. Here's part of what Joe Biden had to say.
Did you have one Georgia election law, Mr. President? Say again? The new Georgia election law?
It's an atrocity. The idea, if you want any indication that it has nothing to do with fairness, nothing to do with decency, they passed a law saying you can't provide water for people standing in line while they're waiting to vote. You don't need anything else to know that this is nothing but punitive, designed to keep people from voting. You can't provide water for people about to vote. Give me a break.
By the way, the Washington Post said he wasn't telling the truth there, and then he went on in a conference with Democratic donors to say Major League Baseball should abandon Georgia, and now, here's the White House press secretary.
I want to ask you a question about Major League Baseball. The league decided to move its All-Star game out of Atlanta. That's something that the president said he supported before. Does he then agree with their decision to move that game out of Atlanta under the voting law?
Well, I wish I had this with me on Friday because I got asked a question, and there's just some help, what I thought would be helpful context, and I know you probably don't have the transcript in front of you. So when the president was asked during an ESPN interview last week, he was asked the question, last week, Major League Baseball Players Association executive director said that he would look forward to discussing moving the All-Star game from Atlanta in the wake of Georgia's governor signing into law a bill passed by the Republican-led state legislature to overhaul how its state elections are run. How do you view this possibility of moving the All-Star game out of Georgia? And he said, quote, I think today's professional athletes are acting incredibly responsible. I would strongly support them doing that. So he was not dictating for what Major League Baseball should do, that they should, dictating they should move the All-Star game. That was their decision. They made that decision. And as he stated earlier, he certainly supports that.
So he does support the decision to move the game then?
Well, he supports them being able to make the decision and respond to what their players' asks are, given many of them are impacted, of course, by these laws.
Let's just be clear here. Joe Biden, in a conference call with Democratic donors, said that he thought that they should move the game. She's reading the transcript from a separate statement by Joe Biden. Now, here's something else that she had to say.
Before the president said that he would strongly support moving the All-Star game out of Georgia, did he consider the economic impact? Because the Cobb County tourism CEO is saying they're going to lose $100 million in lost business activity, 8,000 hotel rooms. Did he think about that before he said he would strongly support the move?
Again, he was doing an interview he was given the context, as I just read out to you in full detail of how the question was asked. He answered the question.
Uh-huh. So no consequences. No consequences. Didn't consider it. Didn't consider the economic impact. This is where we are, folks. Biden essentially saying punish Georgia. Now is saying, he never really said. He said he supported their decision. He never thought about the economic consequences. One more.
Is the president going to change the way that he talks about the new Georgia voting law? Because in that interview that you referenced, he said the law would end voting at 5 o'clock when working people are just getting off, and he said it would end voting hours early so working people can't cast their vote after their shift is over. But the Washington Post gave that claim 4 Pinocchios because that part of the law gives counties the option to extend voting hours. And so I'm just curious if the president is going to change the way that he's talking.
Well, fundamentally, the president doesn't believe it should be made harder to vote. He believes it should be easier. And this bill makes it harder to request and return an absentee ballot. It collapses the length of Georgia's runoff election, making it harder for large jurisdictions to offer early voting. It imposes rigid new restrictions on local officials' ability to set polling hours to suit the needs of voters in their county. Those are all pieces of the bill. So his view is that we need to make it easier and not harder to vote, and that will continue to be what he advocates for.
But the thing he said has been determined by election law experts to be not true. So I'm just curious if he's going to stop saying that.
Well, again, I think we can, the fact checkers will also tell you that this bill does not make it easier for people across the state of Georgia to vote. And
Actually, the fact checker says it does. The fact checkers, the Washington Post fact check that gave Joe Biden 4 Pinocchios, actually says in the very next sentence that election experts who have reviewed the law say, in fact, it does make it easier to vote. It's amazing how they will hang on to a lie. Now, this is the larger point here. The American media is out to get the Republicans at this point. We'll get into the Ron DeSantis stuff a little more later. That has exploded into a pretty big national story. What we've got going on here is an American press that constantly held Donald Trump to, you're a liar, you're a liar, you're a liar. Joe Biden lies, and they're like, yeah, so he's kind of old, give him a pass. It's not what he meant. They constantly cover for him in ways they would never cover for Donald Trump. They constantly give Joe Biden a pass in ways they never would for Donald Trump. Amari on Twitter, he had a tweet up, and he noticed, and this is true, and it's something I've commented on here before. One of the most disturbing trends in the American media at this point is how these institutions, all of which have leaned to the left, at least in the past, tried to value on the front page of newspapers and in the lead stories, getting the basic facts of stories right. They may lean left. They may have a left-wing worldview. They may approach stories that they would never approach with conservatism. They would approach a story that benefits liberals, and they would avoid a story that might benefit conservatives, but they would tell the story as it was. Nowadays, with younger reporters in these institutions, an editor gets fired if he tries to stand up to the woke young reporter who no longer is interested in telling us the truth, but wants to tell us a narrative. The narrative and the story trump the truth and the fact of the situation. You used to be able to read the front page of the New York Times and say, okay, this story is true. Maybe they made some mistakes. Nowadays, you read even the front page of the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal or the Washington Post or the lead story on CNN or the nightly news, and you're thinking, what is the agenda being used to advance the story? What lies are they telling? You cannot believe the mainstream media's out of the gate anymore. In fact, nowadays, when big stories explode, like take, for example, the Matt Gaetz story. The Matt Gaetz story, there does appear to be veracity to it. But when it first broke, I waited to see before engaging the story because it came from the New York Times. And the New York Times these days doesn't actually tell you the truth. They tell you what the left wants you to believe. So you got to wait a couple of days and let the stories marinate before you have any idea, is there some substance to it? And now we know from multiple reporting outlets, including from Fox News, there is substance to the allegations. The Trump team is essentially throwing Gates under the bus, but you got to wait now before you go after the salacious story by and large, because inevitably the mainstream media gets the story out of the gate wrong because their presuppositional biases from the left are dictating how they see stories, and they leave key facts on the floor if those facts undermine the narrative. The narrative is more important than the truth. Whatever happened to the media outlets that just gave you the facts and let you make up your mind? Nowadays, the media spends more energy attacking Fox News for daring to tell the same story with all the facts they cut out of it. And, oh, yeah, it's just a right way. They're just telling you what you want to hear. No, they're actually telling you the facts that, for example, 60 Minutes left out of the story because they had a design to make Ron DeSantis look bad in that latest story. Whatever happened to just telling us the facts and letting us make up our own mind? The media can't do that anymore, from the Georgia voting rights law to anything else, and they constantly give Democrats a pass on facts and truth in ways they never would Republicans.
Well connected and well respected.
Hello and welcome back. It is Erick Erickson here. The phone number 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. Y'all, I want to encourage you to get up to Jasper, Georgia, May 1st and 2nd. 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. It's the annual Rockin' Affair at Rocco's Rockin' Affair. It is a way to welcome the warm weather, to welcome not having to wear your masks constantly, to welcome being able to be outside in groups, to welcome life coming back to normal. There's going to be music and food. There's a children's area. It's free to the public. Free to the public. Now, here's the thing. If you're a vendor, if you want to be a part of this, this is where Rocco's needs you. Go to roccosjasper.com or to their Facebook page. Look up Rocco's, roccosjasper.com. They've got Reformation Brewery. They've got Coca-Cola. They got Jasper Jeep. They're partnering with Pickens Pets. They want you. If you got a food truck, you got a wares, you got something you want to show off to the crowd, go to roccosjasper.com. Sign up to be a vendor. They're going to have music. They're going to have all sorts of attractions there. It will be May 1st and May 2nd, and you're going to want to go to Rocco's and Jasper as we welcome back warm weather, no masks, and getting back together with friends. And if you're a vendor and you want to show up and show off, go to roccosjasper.com and register. Thank you to them for sponsoring this as well. All right, we got a ton of other stuff happening that we got to talk about. I want to spend some time. I was on Fox and Friends this morning, actually, talking about what do we do with the woke corporations? What should conservatives do? I wrote about this morning in my morning email. I got some thoughts. First and foremost, out of the gate, I think that I'm not into cancel culture. That's what the left does, nor am I into boycotts. But I think that the right is going to have to reciprocate because corporations clearly are paying attention to this stuff. If a corporation decides that it's going to go woke, I think conservatives need to signal to that corporation it's going to go broke. The number one thing conservatives need to do is in conservative states, stop trying to lure Fortune 500 companies into your state through tax incentives and crony capitalism. Get rid of it. There is no reason for Delta Airlines to get a fuel tax break in Georgia. None. There is no reason to give tax incentives to bring a Fortune 500 company into the state of Georgia or Texas or Florida or South Carolina or Tennessee or anywhere else. There is no reason to disrupt the free market. Have a free market where everyone plays equally. And what we're finding in this country is that Fortune 500 companies don't like the free market of the level playing field. They want advantages no one else gets. Stop prioritizing luring a Fortune 500 company into your state. Start prioritizing allowing your small businesses to become the next Fortune 500. Start there. But there's a whole lot more as we engage in cancel culture around the country. There is a whole lot more conservatives need to do. I want to spend some time on this when we come back because it's very clear, given some headlines this morning I want to review for you, that the left is coming for all of us. 15. And they're coming for our money and our candidates and our campaigns, our way of life, and we got to stand up to them. Hello and welcome. It is Erick Erickson here. The phone number, 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. Those of you just tuning in new to the program, you can go to ewerickson.com every day. You can even find recipes there. I got to add some. You can follow me all over social media at EW Erickson as well. I want to spend a few moments thinking about what conservatives need to do. I'm not a fan of trying to cancel people. I don't think it's something conservatives should do. I'm not a fan of boycotts. I increasingly think boycotts may be something conservatives do need to do. It's not about canceling corporations. It's about reminding them that they need our dollars as well. They tend to take us for granted. I was on Fox and Friends this morning talking about this issue and reminded them of what happened with Target. Though Target denied it, it very clearly impacted their earnings, and they ultimately had to concede the point. Several years ago, during the Obama administration, Target announced it would allow men into the women's bathrooms. In the name of affirming people's gender identity, if you were a dude who decided you were a woman, you could go into the woman's bathroom, and Target would let you do it. Didn't matter whether you transitioned or not. And a whole lot of people did not like the idea of having a man walk in on their child in the bathroom, or having a woman walk in on their son in the men's bathroom. And a lot of people stopped shopping at Target. The result was a negative impact to Target's earnings, and Target bent over backwards to try to wave it all away and say it wasn't from people reducing their shopping at Target. The tell, though, was that Target then came out and talked about how much money they were going to spend in putting unisex bathrooms in Target to make people feel more comfortable. They wouldn't have gone out of their way to change all of that, but for the actual impact of people no longer shopping at Target. The problem with boycotts on the conservative side of the coin is that conservatives typically are not as united in these sorts of things as the left is. On the left, while they are not as powerful as I think a lot of people think they are, they're certainly culturally dominant right now, however, they tend to be as fractious as people on the right. However, when it comes to causes the left believes in, because they now treat politics as their religion, they with religious zeal are more prone to uniting around causes like boycotts. They take a cause like the voting rules changes in Georgia. They have decided they're a moral outrage, even though it's based on lies. They've decided they're moral outrage, and they have united together, and they have pressured businesses. Well, the pressure campaign is ongoing. CNBC has a story up now targeting various companies, including Disney, Geico, Expedia, and Geo Group. I don't even know what Geo Group is, but they're targeting them for giving money to Florida lawmakers who are backing voting reform bills. CBS News has a story up targeting Ron DeSantis fraudulently. CBS News also ran a story. It was a news story by a news reporter on how to pressure corporations to punish Republican states. It was treated as a news story. The New York Times is also engaged on the pressure campaign. Here's the headline: companies can't stay on the political sidelines. The fight over voting rights shows corporate leaders face pressure to speak out, even in the post-Trump era, pushing how to pressure corporations. It's very clear there is an organized movement on the left in the media to pressure corporations to distance themselves from anything conservatives want. Conservatives are going to have to unite, whether they want to or not. Because this affects the fiscal conservatives, it affects the social conservatives, it affects the small government conservatives, it affects the alt-right, it affects the nationalist-oriented conservatives, it affects every perspective of the right-of-center coalition. Notice there I didn't say conservative, because some of these people on the right are no longer conservative, they're post-conservative, but it affects them as well. It affects the conservatives and the non-conservative right. It affects Republicans. It affects the people who hate the Republican Party but are on the right side of the aisle. This is becoming a real problem, and the media and the left are working in concert as one entity, as they always have been, more so with gusto now to do this. So there are a couple of things conservatives need to do. One is we all need to get on the same page about boycotting. I think an easy target is Major League Baseball, whether it's canceling your MLB subscription or not going to a game or not investing time to care, or the President Trump having a counter program at the Brave Stadium. I think the President Trump show up at the Brave Stadium the same day as the All-Star game and see who gets the bigger eyeballs. You know, Fox News would carry it. Newsmax would carry it. OAN would carry it. See who gets the bigger eyeballs. Counter program, the left. I think that there have got to be united statements from conservative organizations calling out various corporations. They've got to unite between the religious conservatives, the non-religious conservatives, the social groups, the churches. You got to target specific corporations and say, do not do business with this corporation. Very much what happened with Target. But here's the bigger issue, and the one that I think is the easiest to do. Conservative states have got to stop using tax breaks, tax incentives, and changes in the law to lure Fortune 500 companies from blue states to red states. One of the things that Texas is seeing, one of the things Georgia is seeing, even Tennessee is starting to see this, is Fortune 500 companies are not moving into their states and hiring the pre-existing citizens. What they're doing is they're moving into states and bringing their woke employees from the blue states with them. It was one of the big reasons being in Georgia. Georgia was vying for Amazon's East Coast headquarters. And I very vehemently opposed it because I knew exactly what would happen. And it is what is happening in Virginia and in Tennessee. Amazon decided to split its headquarters actually in three pieces, I guess. They were going to go to Brooklyn. They were going to go to Virginia. They wound up sending the Brooklyn piece to Nashville. What you're seeing is that Amazon is not hiring locally so much as they are transplanting their woke leftist employees from the left coast to the East Coast. When corporations have come into Georgia under the last couple of governors, what they did is they prioritized moving new businesses into the state that aren't really new businesses. They're old businesses from blue states that were economically impacted by the very policies the corporations supported, and now they wanted to come to Georgia and screw up Georgia, and that's what they're doing. It's time to get rid of the tax breaks. It's time to get rid of the crony capitalism. Let the free market actually work. One of the things that Texas is now realizing as tech companies have come in, tech companies are more and more influential among Republicans in the Texas legislature, and they're demanding all sorts of woke policies from the Texas legislature. Texas has to stand up to the woke corporations. Georgia has to stand up to the woke corporations. Tennessee does. Florida does. Every conservative state must stand up to the woke corporations. Deny them tax breaks. Why is Delta continuing to get a fuel tax break? Why is Delta getting incentives in Georgia when Delta is aligning itself with the wokes against the interests of the people of Georgia? Get rid of Delta's fuel tax savings that was given by the legislature. Same with Home Depot, same with Coca-Cola. Get rid of their tax breaks. They're not going to move states, and if they do, they will take their left-wing employees with them, and so be it. This isn't about canceling corporations, though it may come to that. This is about a couple of things. One, these corporations that are now interfering on behalf of the left need to understand that there will be consequences from the right. You cannot advocate wokeism without the right responding. You cannot be captured by the left. If you want to do business with everybody, you better keep your nose out of politics. These companies need to understand that they need conservative dollars. You know, they're not boycotting China. Major League Baseball is going to go do business with China. The NBA does business with China. Disney makes a mint off of doing business with China. they can condemn Georgia and its voting rights reforms and election integrity packages. China has none of that. China has concentration camps, and they're willing to turn a blind eye because ultimately it's all about the money. It really has nothing to do with Georgia's laws. It has to do with money. They're afraid of the wokes boycotting them. They take conservative money for granted. Oh, they're never going to stop spending with us. They don't do boycotts. But China will punish them. The wokes will punish them. Conservatives are going to have to unite and stop having these corporations take you for granted. I think one of the smartest things that could be done in the conservative movement and right of center politics right now is to put Mike Pence in charge of the Heritage Foundation. Put Mike Pence in charge of the Heritage Foundation and allow him as an honest broker who is respected across the board on the right by the non-Trump and the Trump wings of the party. Have him be the leader of the Heritage Foundation, the most respected conservative group in Washington, D.C., and have him get everyone around the table and say, all right, all of us together, working through churches, through our own organizations, we're going to call out this particular company, and we're going to urge conservatives to take action against it. The mere threat of a united front on the right to do this sort of stuff will have an impact. Mike Pence is the guy who could do it. I think Mike Pence, it's a no-brainer. Kay Coles-James has done great work as the president of the Heritage Foundation. She has expressed a desire to move on. She's going to retire. It's time to elevate Mike Pence to that position. He was the leader of a think tank in Indiana before he became governor of Indiana, or before he became a congressman and then governor of Indiana. He could certainly do it in Washington, D.C. He has the respect of the entire right of center movement. Mike Pence could be the guy to help shake this up and become a cultural force for conservatives as they're battling the wokes. The Heritage Foundation should consider this. Now, I haven't talked to the vice president. I don't know whether he would want it or not, but I think he'd be the best person for it. And he could get the Club for Growth guys, the American Enterprise Institute guys, the Family Research Council guys. He could get them all together at a table as an honest broker and say, listen, we don't all agree on everything, and we don't want to go across the board targeting everybody, but we all need to come together and recognize that this is an existential threat to all of us. We need to pick one company, and we need to move heaven and earth to get every conservative in America to stop doing business with that company, at least temporarily, so they realize that we do have a financial impact on their business, just like the wokes and just like China. They've got to start taking it seriously, and they've got to stay out of politics. In the same time, concurrently, among these conservative groups, Mike Pence, as the honest broker, could convince them all to go all in Texas, in Georgia, in Tennessee, in South Carolina, in Florida, across the country, saying stop giving tax breaks to woke corporations to move into your state. Force them to be subjected to the policies they themselves have advocated in high tax, high regulation states like California, Washington, New York, Illinois. Make them do it. If they're not going to change, there's no reason for them to come to our states and bring their woke employees to disrupt our states. Pence at Heritage as the president is a no-brainer to me, and he could help unite everyone in the conservative movement behind this. Individually, conservatives are not going to get very far. The wokes on the left are highly united, and they have the entire American media on their side. And they have China on their side. Conservatives, however, in this country have economic clout, and they're not using it in an organized way right now like the left is. I don't like boycotts. I don't want to do boycotts, but right now the right is unilaterally disarming against the left, and we're going to have to fight back. And I think the way to fight back is not to go all in on cancel culture, because one, I don't think it's right, and two, we don't have cultural dominance or cultural significance right now. But we do have economic significance, and we should be deploying our economic significance to remind these corporations that if they start sticking their nose in political business on behalf of the wokes, there will be repercussions for them from the right. They either need to stay on the sidelines, or they need to understand that they're going to make enemies on one side or the other. And a lot of them want to move to red states that have more favorable economic climate. And we should be moving heaven and earth to make sure we're not subsidizing their moves into our states. And governors who are doing it, they need to be campaigned against. One of the smart things, I live in Georgia. One of the smart things Brian Kemp, our governor, did when he came in is he stopped trying to lure Fortune 500 companies into the state through the use of tax incentives. In fact, he said there are enough businesses in Georgia that could be bigger businesses if we invested in a good free market anti-crony capitalist agenda for Georgia. We could let the little guy in Georgia become the big guy. And it was smart. The prior governor did every sort of thing possible to lure Amazon in, lure Mercedes in, lure all these Fortune 500 companies in. And to his credit, they came. But they also fundamentally altered the culture of the state of Georgia by bringing in their woke leftist employees. They did not actually hire people from Georgia. They brought them with them. Governors in red states need to understand, be good for business. Keep your taxes low. Get rid of the income tax. Just have a sales tax. Get rid of regulation. Get rid of all the tax breaks and tax incentives to lure in competitors. Make a level playing field. It'll speak for itself. And if they want to move there, let them move there. But don't design incentive package to get them there. Let the free market work. Get rid of crony capitalism. And conservatives, you got to unite. You got to stand up with one voice against the wokes, or they're going to run over all of us. They're coming for every single one of us. They're coming for our churches. They're coming for our culture. They're coming for our values. They're coming for laws in red states, and they're using the media to lie and defame all of us, to lie and smear us, to lie against states that just want to have election integrity. You got to fight back.
News and in-depth analysis from
Wow, we haven't even gotten to infrastructure week yet. Some big changes coming. We'll get to that in the next hour. I got to play this clip, though, and I apologize in advance. I apologize. I know. Let's play Piers Morgan.
The last day, ironically, was, as you said, the first day we beat the BBC ever. And we had trebled our ratings. So you would have thought people might be thanking me. Instead, I was basically corralled into a position where I was told you've either got to apologize for effectively disbelieving Meghan Markle's version of events here, or your position is untenable and you have to leave. And my gut was, I was going to be damned if I was going to apologize for something that I believe. And I just wasn't going to go down that road. I've seen too many people, when they're bullied by the woke brigade, into apologizing. We saw it with Sharon Osbourne. She was bullied into apologizing for defending me against a disgusting slur that I'm a racist. And rather than the person who was accusing her apologizing to me, Cheryl Underwood, for accusing me falsely of being a racist, Sharon had to apologize for her passionate defense of me, and then she lost her job anyway. We saw recently the editor of Teen Vogue. Before she could even start, she apologized for years about stuff she tweeted as a 17-year-old kid. But that wasn't enough. So apologies don't ever get you anywhere. I don't believe Meghan Markle.
So, for those of you who missed it, Piers Morgan on a TV show actually was competing against the BBC in Britain. That TV show, his ratings had gone up, and then he, on the day that it's finally beat the BBC, had to walk off the set. He was being bullied by people for daring to not believe precious little Meghan Markle. And essentially what he's saying is that there's no reason to apologize anymore. This is one of my fears in society now with cancel culture, is that no one ever apologizes when it's just good manners to apologize. But it's also good manners to then accept the apology. What we are increasingly finding in woke society is that you are defined by the worst thing you ever did. If it was 15 years ago, it is what will define you for the rest of your life. And there's no reason to grow up. There's no reason to move up. There's no reason to move on. There's no reason to ever overcome, transcend, or be a better person than that low moment in your life when you did the bad thing, because no one's ever going to care or accept your apology. The wokes want to define you by the worst thing you ever did. And you know what? A lot of people on the right do the same thing for people on the left. They're never allowed to grow up. They're never allowed to move on. We throw at them the thing they said 10 years ago. People are complex. They should be allowed to grow up, and they should be allowed to move on. But culturally in society, you're never allowed to say, look, I screwed up. I'm sorry. I consider me old-fashioned. It's part of my faith, however. When someone says, I'm sorry, you move on. You don't judge their apology. Well, he didn't say the specific words that I think he should have said for me to believe that the apology was actually sincere. So, nope, not going to move on. No, you just move on. You just move on, folks. You got to. And Piers Morgan essentially saying there's no point in apologizing anymore. There's always a point in good manners, even when the other side doesn't think so. Because remember, there are a lot of people who aren't as engaged in this stuff as maybe you and I are, and they're just looking for people who are not biblical donkeys to elevate and pay attention to. So don't be woke. Don't be like those people, and the rest of us will start listening. and welcome. It is Erick Erickson here. Glad to have you with me. The phone number, should you like to be a part of the program, 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. You can get me all over social media at EW Erickson, ERICKSON. Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, that's my favorite. And you can also go to ewerickson.com every day. You can listen to the live stream, get the podcast, get my recipes, what I'm cooking. I put my smoked wing recipe up there. One important note, because I'm getting a ton of requests for this still. This past Friday, on this very program, I interviewed Tim Keller. Tim Keller was the founding pastor of Redeemer in New York City. He's got a book out, Hope in Times of Fear. He's 10 months into battling pancreatic cancer. And I spoke to him about theology, the Black Lives Matters movement, how this current social justice movement is different from the civil rights era, largely because this one is premised with no hope, even though it uses biblical language. We had a very good conversation, and a lot of people, I'm still today getting emails about it. If you want to hear my interview in its entirety with Tim Keller, unedited, we recorded it Thursday night, and I had to edit it to fit it into radio. It was about an hour radio. It's a 29-minute interview. If you can subscribe to the podcast of the program, if you go to ewerickson.com, you can get the link for the podcast. But if you text the word data to the show number 877-973-7425, text the word data to 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. You will get back a link, and the first link is the unedited long-form interview with Tim Keller. I just, as an aside, I got to say, the feedback from a lot of you about the Good Friday show, I always do the Good Friday show, it is complete deviation from everything you typically expect from conservative radio, but I feel very strongly about continuing to do it. And I've never had a guest on for the Good Friday program. It has always just been me. And I'll be very honest with you, I typically don't have callers on the program. And I ran into this because I'm doing now 2 shows, and on the second show, I had callers. And I don't mean to be disrespectful to one of the callers in particular, but it was very clear in me, a radio host talking theology, someone wanted to make a point that I had missed a point that he felt was super compelling, and in so doing, he muddled everything and couldn't make a cogent point. And I had to ultimately stop him and tell him that he was confusing everyone. And then we ran out. I gave him way more rope than I should have, and he ultimately hanged his point and had to go to commercial break and reset and try to explain it. It's so hesitant. The people who, he's talking theology, I know something about it, let me share. And I don't mean that disparagingly. It's just, it reminds me that I shouldn't take phone calls, but maybe I should do more interviews with pastors and theologians. Al Mohler is someone I need to get back on the program, but Tim Keller I heard from so many people who said they all had very similar stories, that they hit commercial break and they had to sit in their car and they waited. They couldn't let go. They had to finish the interview with Keller. They had to hear it. It was that good of an interview. And it was much more of a conversation than an interview. If you want a full unedited copy of it, text the word data to 877-973-7425. Infrastructure Week is upon us. Infrastructure Week has gone on. It's funny to me to hear, somebody's asking, is that the right number? 877-973-7425. Text, let me make sure it's working. It should be 877-973-7425. And then you text the word data, and it should be working. You should get back. Let's see. Does it go? Is my text even going? Well, it should. If not, use 33777. Because I know data to 33777 works. It should work. Both of them should. I don't know. I don't have time for that. I got to talk. Infrastructure Week. We've got the President of the United States intent on Infrastructure Week. And you've got members of the media. I heard someone yesterday say this, that, it's kind of, we joked during the years of infrastructure with the Trump administration. Was it Jim Acosta who said that? That it was kind of a joke. Infrastructure Week was a punchline. No, Infrastructure Week was a punchline even through the Obama administration. Obama kept saying, we're going to pivot to jobs, then we're going to pivot to infrastructure. And they never actually did it. Infrastructure Week has become the butt of jokes for years now. And not just because of Donald Trump. And Joe Biden is now committed to infrastructure. Did you hear Jim Acosta? This guy always finds reason to make himself part of the story. I don't know if you saw Jim Acosta from CNN. And I used to like the guy, but man, his ego has gotten out of control. During the Trump years, he became the story. And you couldn't defend the stuff Jim Acosta did. Even his CNN colleagues behind the scenes bristled over Jim Acosta media whoring, trying to get himself attention. And I saw the story. He got the vaccine. He put up a picture. He was literally wearing a shirt about, on this day, I covered such and such a story, and this happened to me, and all I got was this T-shirt. Who wears a shirt like that except an egomaniac? And now listen to him justifying the infrastructure package.
As Annie was saying, there's a lot to be covered in this Biden infrastructure plan. We got used during the Trump era, to think of Infrastructure Week.
Listen to this. It was a bipartisan joke going back to the Obama administration, and he makes it all about Trump.
Joke. This might be an infrastructure year in how we cover all of this. And I mean, as far as I'm concerned, can we just have a damn high-speed train in this country? I mean, can I please get to New York, from New York to Washington without problems on the Acela? And can I get on the Wi-Fi, by the way, when I ride the train and have that not be a problem? I mean, we have some major infrastructure problems in this country.
Well, okay. Jim Acosta not having Wi-Fi is apparently a major infrastructure problem in this country. Jim Acosta not having Wi-Fi on a high-speed train from New York to Washington means that we need a $2 trillion infrastructure plan that will also cover the caring economy. Now, what the hell is the caring economy? I have no idea, but that's what the Biden administration is talking about. They want this full-on infrastructure plan. Here, by the way, is Senator Padilla of California talking about this.
As we work ahead towards the American Jobs Plan now, it is not just roads and bridges, right? We're going to build back better. We're going to build back more sustainably. We're going to build back more inclusively, because it's not just our infrastructure that needs rebuilding, it's our economy that needs rebuilding to be inclusive of the entrepreneurs that are there in our communities, but aren't always recognized by the traditional financial institutions. So I'm just honored and pleased to be part of today's event. Thank you for your inspiration and for your example, and you continue to count on our support.
Now, if you couldn't quite understand what he was saying, this is the new senator from California who was appointed to replace Kamala Harris, that when we build back better, we're going to build back more inclusively. That's right. When we build back better, we're going to build back more inclusively. We are somehow diversity is going to have real meaning when we build bridges and roads. I guess we're going to change the different colors of asphalt because that'll be highly diverse if we do something like that. Oh my goodness gracious. This is where we are, folks. This is where we are. The bat poop crazy nonsense. We got Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, of course, who is out convinced that if you say the word surge, that you're using white supremacy framing. You've got the Democrats now saying we're going to use the infrastructure plan as a way to advance diversity. Here's Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana on this infrastructure plan.
Well, let's leave La La Land for a while. This is not an infrastructure bill. If you think this is an infrastructure bill, you probably better stay away from sharp objects. This is a Green New Deal, welfare, and reparations bill. Being charitable, less than 10% of the bill is devoted to infrastructure, and we don't even know what the projects are. You know who picks the projects? Speaker Pelosi, Senator Schumer, and President Biden. Now, one need not be clairvoyant to see that their projects are going to end up in New York and California and blue states. So there you have it. You've got a political slush fund. And you can say that, and maybe even believe that 2 plus 2 equals 5, but just because you say it doesn't make it true. The correct answer is 4. This is not an infrastructure bill. It's also outrageously expensive. There is no free lunch. You don't get one now. They're going to pay for it through more debt and higher taxes.
It is a tax increase. That's essentially what's going on here. So the Senate parliamentarian allegedly, purportedly, according to the Democrats, although the Republicans somewhat disagree, the Senate Democrats say the Senate parliamentarian has said they can take another bite at the reconciliation package. Now, for those of you who don't know, reconciliation is a tool in the Senate where you can pass spending and tax items that do not change public policy without dealing with the filibuster. So it only takes 51 votes. They did this to pass the COVID relief bill, which barely covered COVID relief. It was just a big spending package. This, they want to raise the corporate tax rate. But the problem is they don't have Joe Manchin on board. And Joe Manchin, he's not a fan of it. He's not a fan of raising the tax rate. It's not just him. Zach Evans at National Review has this. Senator Joe Manchin said he would oppose raising the corporate tax rate to 28%, a key component of the Biden administration's infrastructure bill. As the bill exists today, it needs to be changed, he told Hoppy Kercheval. The senator added he could support raising the corporate tax rate to 25%, but not to 28% as envisioned in the bill. It's more than just me, he said. There are 6 or 7 other Democrats who feel very strongly about this. We have to be competitive, and we're not going to throw caution to the wind. Manchin emphasized the bill would not move forward without his support. With 50 Senate seats and the vice presidency, Democrats need the support of all their senators in order to pass the legislation. If I don't vote to get on it, it's not going anywhere, Manchin said. Several House Democrats, including Representative Tom Scuzzi of New York, Josh Gottheimer of New Jersey, told Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen that they couldn't go along with it unless it got rid of the SALT deduction. The SALT deduction is a tax benefit for millionaires. The SALT deduction allows millionaires in high-tax states to deduct 100% of their state taxes. Now, in anticipation of the Democrats bringing back the SALT deduction, New York has unveiled a state budget that gives massive tax increases to rich people. Huge tax increases in New York. And their logic is that we can increase our taxes punitively because you're going to be able to deduct it 100% from your federal taxes, which will save you money. But not if they don't bring it back. Now, here's the thing. According to the rules of reconciliation, you can't negatively impact the budget. So, if they can't raise the corporate rate to 28% and only 25%, they can't bring back the full SALT deduction. Otherwise, they can't get it through reconciliation in the Senate. So it completely collapses. The Biden administration originally said that they weren't going to consider bringing back the SALT deduction. Now they're saying, well, they're going to have to.
There's some that are proposing, as you all know, SALT deductions in other areas that are not revenue raisers. So this will be all a part of the discussion. And absolutely, our economic team and number data crunchers will be crunching numbers as we proceed. But we're kind of in the early stages of these discussions at this point in time.
Key point there, it's not a revenue raiser. To get through reconciliation, you got to have something that either is net zero in terms of fiscal impact or raises revenue. They're going to have a hard time doing this with or without reconciliation.
There's not my truth or your truth.
Hello. I did just check. If you text the word data to 33777, it still works. That number goes away here in a couple months because of carrier rules with the cell phone companies. But if you text data to 33777, you can get the Tim Keller interview I was telling you about if you want to do it. Now, we got to consider, what is infrastructure? What is infrastructure? Republicans, this is, of course, the New York Times, so be careful. The Republicans say the White House is tucking liberal social programs into legislation that should be focused on roads and bridges. The administration says their approach invests in the future. The early political and economic debate over President Biden's $2 trillion American Jobs Plan is being dominated by a philosophical question. What does infrastructure really mean? Does it encompass the traditional idea of fixing roads, buildings, bridges, and financing other tangible products? Or in an evolving economy, does it expand to include initiatives like investing in broadband, electric car charging stations, and care for older, disabled Americans? Define infrastructure.
Infrastructure means the basic physical and organizational structures and facilities, for example, buildings, roads, power supplies, needed for the operation of a society or enterprise.
Wow, Siri didn't screw up. So, arguably, electric car charging stations fits, but care for older, disabled Americans? That's the debate shaping up as Republicans attack the plan with pie charts and scathing quotes, saying it allocates only a small fraction of the money on real infrastructure, like home, and it addresses home care, electric vehicles, and even water pipes. Even if you stretch the definition of infrastructure some, it's about 30% of the $2.25 trillion package. What people think of infrastructure, they think of roads, bridges, ports, airports. Mr. Biden is pushing back, according to the New York Times, saying that after years of calling for infrastructure spending that includes power lines, internet cables, and other programs beyond transportation, the Republicans are now trying to redefine it. It's kind of interesting when Republicans put forward an infrastructure plan. They thought everything from broadband to dealing with other things qualified, and now it's changed. Well, okay, here's the thing. His package does include infrastructure, but then also includes things like making sure school children are drinking clean water, high-speed rail lines, taking care of senior citizens, and then the building blocks of a modern high-tech society. I do think broadband qualifies as infrastructure these days. I think it does. But I think elder care doesn't. They're quibbling over definitions. And some of these things I think are rather silly. So workforce development. Joe Biden thinks that infrastructure consists of workforce development. And the thing that the Democrats have going for them right now is some level of hypocrisy from Republicans. Like, for example, Rob Portman in the past, a senator from Ohio, has called for workforce development as infrastructure, and now he's blasting Joe Biden for it. Yes, there's a level of hypocrisy there, but it doesn't mean in either case that workforce development is infrastructure. It doesn't mean that providing for nursing home care is infrastructure, regardless of whether Republicans did it in the past or not. It's a rather silly reshaping of the American economy. It has Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's fingerprints all over it as well, in some of her silliness and her deep thoughts out there that genuinely make no sense about the way she's moving.
And now, Deep Thoughts by Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
30. Capitalism has not always existed in the world. It will not always exist in the world. When this country started, we were not a capitalist nation.
That was Deep Thoughts by Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
Real deep thoughts there by AOC as she helps shape this infrastructure plan. Hello there. Welcome back. It is Erick Erickson here. It just so happens to be my show. You are more than welcome to call in at 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. Except you, if I'm real honest with you, can't today. You can't. The call screener isn't there. So the phones are just ringing. I'm sorry. I don't mean to mislead you. Sometimes it happens. Family situation, couldn't be helped. And so I have to talk for all 3 hours all by myself, but that's okay. Now, I need to tell you about our latest sponsor, and oh my goodness gracious, this can't come at a more timely time for me because allergies. My mom yesterday, actually, she texted me and she said, you sounded great, but you sound a little tired. My allergies have been killing me. And I got an air purifier and my son swiped it because my kids' allergies are worse than mine. Okay, so let me set the stage for you. I don't care where you're listening in the country. You think, oh, the pollen is so bad. Y'all have not seen pollen until you move to middle Georgia, where I live. I've got friends from Florida and South Carolina who think, oh, the pine trees, the pollen's so bad, everything's yellow. And then they get to Georgia, like, oh my God, what? It's incredible how bad the pollen is, and my allergies are killing me. And I only recently discovered air purifiers, and I want to tell you about one, and I'm delighted to have them as a sponsor. I wish my kid wasn't in school because he could tell you all about it, because he loves his Eden Pure air filter, the Eden Pure Thunderstorm. Here it is a portable air filter. It is small. It has a plug. You can put it in you can put it on the wall. You can put it in your car. It has a USB charger that comes with it. You can take it camping with you with a battery pack, put it in your tent. It is a godsend, this thing. If you have allergies like I do and like my son does, like my daughter does, having one of these air purifiers that you can put in your bedroom at night to not only clean the air, but oxygenate the air, produce ozone, get rid of viruses and bacteria, deal with pollen. You want the Eden Pure. Listen, right now, if you go to EdenPureDeals.com, you get $10 off the lowest sale price. Now, one of the big issues is odor. The Eden Pure takes care of odor, which is great. We've got in our playroom, we had a leak in the ceiling and it dripped down into the floor. And so it's got the musty smell in there. We've gotten rid of the mold and stuff, but it's left behind a musty smell. The Eden Pure takes care of that. It takes care of the pollen and allergies in my son's room. This thing is great. And it fits in your hand. I've got a giant air purifier on our back porch. We've glassed it in and all. That sucker, it's the size of R2-D2. But the Eden Pure, I mean, it plugs into the wall. It fits in your hand. You can take it with you everywhere. It's so well designed, and you can smell that it works. I mean, that's the most amazing thing about it, is you can literally smell that it's working because your air just smells clean. And it gets rid of the allergies. It gets rid of the mold. It gets rid of fungus. It gets rid of mildew. What you do, again, Eden Pure is the name. Eden, like the Garden of Eden, Pure. Deals.com, EdenPureDeals.com. You will get $10 off their lowest sale price if you use the code word Erick at checkout. Now, you can see my name on the website. If you click on my name, it goes straight through. If you don't, just put Erick, E-R-I-C-K, in at checkout. You're going to get $10 off. This thing is a godsend, and thank you to Eden Pure for sponsoring it, but thank you to them as well for coming up with a portable air purifier that's not the size of a massive R2-D2 robot that actually works just as well as the big ones. Gosh, I love this thing. And I had to get a second one because my kids swiped it from me. They sent me a review copy to see if I really wanted to have them endorsed. Like, yes. And then he stole it from me, and I had to order my own because he stole my Eden Pure Thunderstorm and puts it in his room, and he won't give it back now. But it really helps him. He's not waking up congested every morning like he had been. My family has allergies. This end of the ad here. Let me just say, my family has bad allergies, and we got to go get allergy shots. My son and I do, and we've been bad in the last couple of weeks with my change in schedule. So it's nice to have him not wake up in the morning with a nose full of snot. And it's really because of Eden Pure that he does it. So go to EdenPureDeals.com. Be sure to use my name at checkout. Get $10 off their lowest price. Okay, I got to move on to a lot of other stuff. And I've been rambling this morning. There's so much to talk about. I know what I wanted to talk about. Janet Yellen used to be the Federal Reserve chair. She's now the Treasury Secretary, and she has an ingenious scheme to make sure that the United States, even as it increases its corporate tax rate, stays competitive. Listen to her.
Another consequence of an interconnected world has been a 30-year race to the bottom on corporate tax rates. Competitiveness is about more than how U.S. headquartered companies fare against other companies in global merger and acquisition bids. It's about making sure that governments have stable tax systems that raise sufficient revenue to invest in essential public goods and respond to crises, and that all citizens fairly share the burden of financing government. President Biden's proposals announced last week call for bold domestic action, including to raise the U.S. minimum tax rate and renewed international engagement, recognizing that it's important to work with other countries to end the pressures of tax competition and corporate tax base erosion. We're working with G20 nations to agree to a global minimum corporate tax rate that can stop the race to the bottom. Together, we can use a global minimum tax to make sure the global economy thrives based on a more level playing field in the taxation of multinational corporations and spurs innovation, growth, and prosperity.
Okay, do you get this? This is what Yellen wants. By the way, party foul to the backup audio editor this morning for extending that clip with 4 seconds of silence. The normal audio editor would have trimmed it to get rid of that extra 4 seconds of silence. I'm a jerk sometimes to my employees. They know it. I pay them well. Janet Yellen, the Treasury Secretary. Oh, my goodness gracious. This woman. The Biden administration and Janet Yellen have come up with a way to stop companies from moving capital overseas when they raise the U.S. corporate tax rate to an uncompetitive level of 28%. Now, for those of you who don't know, when Donald Trump became president, there was a bipartisan consensus that the U.S. corporate tax rate at 35% was too high. It was literally the highest tax rate in the world. No company on planet Earth had a corporate tax rate as high as the United States. And from Barack Obama to Paul Ryan, there was bipartisan consensus it needed to be lowered, and no one actually did it. When Donald Trump became president, they lowered it to 20%, which was still higher than a number of countries. Joe Biden's administration wants to raise it to 28%. Joe Manchin, senator from West Virginia, says no way. He's not voting for that, which means it's dead because they got to have his vote to do it. He says the compromise rate is 25%. Republicans still want it to stay where it is, although given the antics of the Fortune 500 lately, they don't care if the Democrats raise taxes on them to some degree. The genius of the Biden administration, and I say that somewhat sarcastically, is they've come up with an idea enunciated by Janet Yellen. That is, all countries on earth should raise their corporate tax rate to disincentivize American companies leaving the United States and moving their capital abroad when we raise the corporate income tax. That is literally the Joe Biden solution. Because in a global economy, if the United States raises its corporate tax rate, companies can move money overseas. This is why when they lowered the corporate tax rate to 20%, a lot of American companies paid their workers $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 checks because they were able to repatriate capital to the United States. Apple, for example, has held billions and billions of dollars in offshore bank accounts because if it repatriated that money, it was going to get taxed at 35%, where it could leave that money overseas and use that money to pay for expenditures outside the United States at a lower tax rate. When the U.S. lowered the tax rate to 20%, Apple repatriated most of that money and then invested that money and expanded into places like Austin, Texas, paying their employees more, rewarding their shareholders and the like, paying off debts. Now, Janet Yellen is worried if the United States raises its tax rate to 28%, that companies like Apple will again move their money offshore. So her solution is, instead of don't raise taxes, her solution is, we think every country on the planet should join us in raising the corporate tax rate to a minimum level that doesn't reward companies for repatriating or moving capital abroad. That's her solution. The Biden administration wants a global tax increase to cover for their domestic corporate tax increase. Meanwhile, there are countries on the planet, including a lot of Caribbean nations, that have a zero tax rate, just so they can see a lot of money come in from foreign investment. And it works, by the way. These nations that have a zero tax rate, they have a lot of corporate investment, and they have a lot of individuals who park money in offshore bank accounts. Now, those people, to be legal, still have to declare it on their tax returns in the United States. Some of them apparently don't. But it gives these small countries a competitive advantage to big countries like the United States. And now Janet Yellen essentially wants to punish those countries for the sin of being competitive against the United States, when the United States could, in fact, just be competitive and see countries want to do business here. But God forbid we should think outside the box and have a free market that's competitive. Nope, can't do that. No. Everybody's got to raise their corporate tax rate so that Joe Biden can raise his corporate tax rate. That's their policy. By the way, it's not going to happen. There are too many countries opposed. What they want is a global treaty that would punish countries that don't raise their tax rate. It's not going to happen. Even a number of European countries are saying no deal. Great Britain, which just separated itself from the EU, is trying to make itself a competitive tax haven to some degree. Singapore, of course, is notoriously a competitive tax haven. It wants nothing to do with this idea. But the Biden administration, that's their plan. Now, Andy Puzder was on Fox Business talking about raising taxes on corporations.
These tax deductions resulted in the strongest labor market in the history of the country back in 2019. We had higher wages for American workers. We had more American workers employed. She just says it's the right thing to do, but doesn't give any reason why it would be the right thing to do.
So what would the impact be, Andy? Less research, less plans for expansion, less job creation? Is that what we would see?
Well, the less money that corporations, the less money that businesses, it's not just corporations, but the less money that businesses have to invest, the less they can invest in growth. And if they don't invest in growth, you don't increase hiring. If you don't increase hiring, you don't have that competition for employees that drives wages up. So you really end up hurting American workers and the American economy. It just doesn't make any sense. You know, this notion that corporations aren't paying their fair share, which seems to be what she's trying to get at, it was ridiculous. Corporations aren't paying less. Some of them are paying zero, but they're not paying zero because the tax rate is too low. They're paying zero because there are legitimate deductions that allow them to reduce the tax they owe. So the whole proposition here is just so far off base.
It is. This is something that the left doesn't seem to understand. Who pays corporate taxes? Any idea on who pays corporate taxes? Any of you? You pay the corporate tax. You pay the corporate tax. Corporations don't actually pay taxes. Certainly there's a corporate tax rate, but what do? They raise the costs of goods and services, particularly goods. They reduce the dividends to shareholders. They reduce wages to employees. They do all sorts of things to offset the cost. It's not like corporations sit around saying, oh, we made $1 billion, time to pay our taxes. No, they use all sorts of depreciations and schemes to reduce their overall tax burden, and then they pass it on to consumers in the form of higher prices. This is economics 101. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to understand this, but of course the left doesn't care about economics. They just want money. And in the process, they cost you and me money, and they tax poor people. It's like the Green New Deal BS. What are they actually doing? They're raising costs on poor people and people with large families. They're driving up their costs so that their rich people can buy Teslas. That's what they do. The Democrats are increasingly the party of rich white people who need Jesus. That is the Democratic Party of the 21st century. They'll raise taxes on poor people, the economic burdens on poor people, all in the name of helping poor people, when really all they're helping are rich white people who need Jesus, who are clearly angry at the world because they're woke. That's the modern Democratic Party. Is it any wonder Black and Hispanic people are fleeing the Democratic Party at an so alarming that about the only thing Democrats can do anymore is scream racism to try to keep people from not fleeing the Democratic Party. And it's not working.
Well connected and well respected.
Hello there. The phone number is, well, you can't call. The call screener is, we've had a family issue, and we didn't have a backup call screener on hand, so I apologize. You just have to listen to me talk. How about that? Now, we need to move on to the poor Democratic future. This is actually kind of remarkable. Philip, you're going to want to circulate this clip. So 2 years ago, the Democrats released a list of Republican targets for 2020. And there were 5 dozen Republicans that were endangered because of Trump. Remember, in 2020, the Republicans lost 0 incumbents. They picked up a number of seats. They're within like 5 votes of the House majority. They were expected to lose about 30 seats. The polls were all wrong. All of the smart people in Washington, we're looking at the internal polling, and the internal polling is terrible for the Republicans. The Republicans, it's going to be a landslide defeat. It's going to be a massive win. The blue wave across the country We've seen the internal polls from the campaigns. We know it's true. The polls were all wrong. And the Democrats, who were targeting like 40 or 50 Republican seats, they wound up losing almost their majority. They never even saw it coming. Well, what a difference 2 years makes. After targeting a massive amount of Republican seats, the Democrats are now only targeting 22 seats. And my, how times have changed. The Republicans took back the 5th district in Oklahoma and the 2nd district in New Mexico, and the Democrats are giving up even trying to get these seats back. Why? Because Joe Biden's anti-energy agenda makes it impossible for the Democrats to take those seats back. Last cycle, the Democrats targeted 10 seats in Texas alone, claiming that they were going to wipe out Texas. Remember the media hyping Texas was going to go blue? The Democrats were going to take over the Texas legislative majority? Well, now they're only targeting 2 seats. Remember, they lost all the ones they wanted last time, and now they're only targeting 2 seats. New Jersey's 2nd congressional district was a top target for the Democrats last cycle. This time, it's not even on the map. It's not looking good for the Democrats. They're having to play defense now. Typically, the House of Representatives of the party that controls the White House, their party does poorly in the midterms. It's pretty clear that they're going to do poorly this time around. They've gone from literally targeting dozens and dozens of Republican seats to just 22 seats, less than 24 seats this time. And they've given up all hope of taking back seats that the Republicans just picked up in states that actually have a thriving fossil fuel industry. That's not good for Nancy Pelosi. And by the way, redistricting is coming as well. The Republicans are going to be able to pick up more districts. The Republicans will control something like 90 seats in the House of Representatives unilaterally in just like 4 states. And it's an amazing number. Between Florida, North Carolina, Georgia, Texas, the Republicans are going to be able to control the redistricting for those seats. And then in other states, the Democrats got very smart and said, hey, let's do nonpartisan redistricting committees. Surely that'll help us. And it turns out that's not going to help them either, because those states have decisively shifted to the GOP. So now they're going to lose seats in those states thanks to their genius scheme of nonpartisan redistricting committees. Things don't look good for the Democrats continuing to keep control of the House of Representatives, and they're all but admitting that it's a hopeless cause. The corollary here is that the Republicans may have difficulty taking back the Senate. The Republicans will play defense because they 6 years ago had such a good election cycle with what was it in 2016, I guess. And this time they're going to be on defense. It's going to be hard for them to take it back, but they could take out Raphael Warnock in Georgia. He's had to delete his heresy from Twitter as it became a national news story across media networks. Hello and welcome. It is Erick Erickson here from coast to coast. The phone number is 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425, but you cannot call. No, don't you do it. We had a family situation with call screener, and so we didn't have a backup. So if you call, you're not going to be able to get through, but that's okay. It's okay. You can hear me talk. I've got to begin with Raphael Warnock, the senator from the state of Georgia who tweeted heresy on Easter. Now, I got to explain this one to you. If I call myself the King of England, under modern woke standards of critical theory, you can't deny me. You've got to bow to me and treat me like I am the King of England. There was a great explanation of how critical theory works. In fact, a buddy of mine is going through a diversity training session today and listing one of the slides lists levels of privilege. If you are white, cisgendered is the insane term for you're a boy who thinks you're a boy. White, heterosexual, cisgendered, male, Christian, and abled, meaning you don't have a disability. That's maximum privilege. If you check all these boxes, you're white, you're male, you're a boy who thinks you're a boy, you don't have mental health issues, you're heterosexual, you're able-bodied, except they say abled, not able-bodied. You don't have disabilities. You're Christian. If you have those characteristics, you have maximum privilege and therefore must be silent on all moral issues. That's the way critical theory works. Therefore, if Neil Armstrong were around today to tell a person who is none of those things that he landed on the moon, and the other person who is non-white, non-male, non-cisgendered, non-heterosexual, disabled, and not Christian says, "Nuh-uh, you did not land on the moon," you, Neil Armstrong, cannot contradict this person because you have so much privilege, you have no moral authority to contradict this person's truth. And it is their truth, not the truth, that is important. So if I say I'm the King of England, I have so much privilege, you can't really treat me that way. But if you are a transgendered female, gay Muslim amputee, and you say you're the Queen of England, then who am I to say anything? Because I got too much privilege. Actually, truth really needs to matter. Truth must be paramount. Truth must matter above all things. And under critical theory, because I am white, male, able-bodied, cisgendered, heterosexual, Christian, I'm not allowed to speak on these moral issues. But still, we should call heresy heresy when there's heresy. And Raphael Warnock, Georgia senator, committed heresy. There has been an outcry from people who are mad at me for calling it heresy. Who are you to say it's heresy? Well, let's see. I'm a lifelong Christian. I have worked on my master's in theology and my doctorate of theology. I have spent a number of years in seminary. I've taken the systematic courses. I've taken the biblical theology courses, the Old Testament courses, the New Testament courses. I consider myself qualified to note Christian heresy and to be able to distinguish between Protestantism, Catholicism, and Orthodoxy, where Orthodoxy meaning not Christian Orthodoxy, but the denomination, the offshoot from Catholicism, the Orthodox faith. there are some people out there who think, listen, if Raphael Warnock says this and he's a reverend, who are you to question him? But you see, the truth still matters. And Raphael Warnock on Easter Sunday tweeted that Easter transcends the resurrection of Christ, that helping others is how we get our salvation. Now, I don't want to take him fully out of context. Let me read it to you actually as it existed. The meaning of Easter is more transcendent than the resurrection of Jesus Christ. Whether you are Christian or not, through a commitment to helping others, we are able to save ourselves. Friends, that is heresy. There is not a Christian denomination under the sun. Pentecostalism, Baptists, Presbyterians, Methodist, Lutheran, Catholic, Greek Orthodox, Russian Orthodox, any of them, Assemblies of God, United Church of Christ, Lutheran Missouri Synod, Lutheran Evangelical, Presbyterian Church in America, Presbyterian Church USA, Evangelical Presbyterian Church, Orthodox Presbyterian Church, Associated Reformed Presbyterian Church, Southern Baptist, Northern Baptist, what Great Commission Baptist, whatever you want to call yourselves. There's not a single Christian denomination that believes in works-based salvation. Now, there are certainly Christian denominations that believe it goes hand in hand with a belief in God, an acceptance of Jesus Christ. But generally, let's use Catholicism. In Catholicism, you accept Jesus as your Savior, and you do good works as a result. Protestants mischaracterize it as works-based salvation, but if you actually pay attention to what Catholics are saying, it is Jesus Christ is your Savior, and now you do good works. Protestants have a twist on it. John Calvin did not want the book of James to be, it was Martin Luther did not want the book of James to be in the Bible because he thought it undermined his by faith alone argument for faith in Jesus Christ. The way that Protestants have reconciled the two is that by your faith in Christ, it makes your good works manifest. You do good works because you are empowered by the Spirit through your faith in Christ to make Christ's goodness manifest on the planet. But there is no Christian denomination on planet Earth that believes that you get your salvation just through your good works for other people. By helping other people, you get salvation. No Christian denomination believes this. And here comes Raphael Warnock, a supposed minister at a supposed Baptist church, who tweets this. It is obvious, defying Christian heresy. It's not even disputable. And there are a bunch of woke hipsters who don't know the first thing about Scripture, the Bible, or Christianity, who are out there arguing that, who are you to say that he doesn't know Christian faith? Well, me and you, if you're a Christian. I've got atheists who are texting me on Sunday saying, I'm not even a believer and I know this is heresy. Now, I talked about this yesterday, but there's more to add here. Warnock has deleted the tweet. Warnock has had to delete his tweet. And the reason he's had to delete his tweet is because it is so manifestly against Christian orthodoxy of any denomination. It exposes him as not really being the man of faith he claimed to be, at least not of the Christian faith. And he's tried to wrap himself in Jesus. Well, if he wraps himself in Jesus and says something like this, it means he doesn't know who Jesus is. Now, which has been abundantly apparent to a lot of us who ever listened to his sermons. He kind of quoted the Bible as some sort of moral, ethical lesson, like an Aesop's fable that teaches you something, but isn't really true. And what we're seeing on the progressive left these days, this is a trend now that we need to wake up to, is that they're trying to wrap themselves around biblical language and biblical rhetoric in ways that they can then co-opt a Christian message. For Raphael Warnock to come out and say that your works get you salvation is manifestly contradictory to what the left is currently doing. The left is essentially at this point saying, by your faith in Christ, you must advocate for voting reform as the love of your neighbor that is manifested through your love of Christ. That if you're not advocating this, you're clearly not a Christian because you clearly don't love Jesus, therefore you don't love your neighbor. that by loving Jesus, you're going to want to elevate the transgender agenda because it's about loving your neighbor. And Jesus is all about love. Jesus is love. Jesus is love on the cross. This is why you have progressive Christians who are trying to get rid of substitutionary atonement. Now, substitutionary atonement, for those of you who aren't Christians, it is, again, fundamental, basic Christianity across all Christian denominations that believe in the Bible, that Jesus Christ was a substitute sacrifice. That should be us on the cross, and instead it's Jesus on the cross, and all of our sins are piled onto him. So that when God looks at us, he no longer sees our sin, he sees Jesus. We are washed in the blood of the Lamb. There is this fancy word in the Bible called propitiation. Nobody uses the word propitiation anymore, but it's essentially substitutionary atonement. Jesus Christ died in our place. He was punished, so we weren't. Now, progressive Christians who they're on their way out the door of Christendom into atheism, that their way station on the way out of Christendom is, well, Jesus is love. And it was all about love on the cross. It was love. Now, no one really is, why, if he loved us so much, why did he have to die? Well, because it was love. But why do I have to kill myself to show my love for someone else? Well, no, but Jesus did. Well, why? Well, they can't actually take the next step and tell us this. They step out of Christendom as they try to explain it. But what they try to do is they try to package Christianity into this Jesus was love. No standard love, a standardless love, just love, love is love, whatever love is. And they use Christian rhetoric to say, well, you have to advance this legislation because God is love, and this shows you're loving other people. Never mind the moral standards in the Bible. We don't pay attention to the moral standards, We're not a legalistic religion. It's all grace. None of it makes sense, and it contradicts itself, but it's what they're doing. They're trying to use Christian rhetoric without using Christian the Christian message. They're trying to use, as Tim Keller talked to me on Friday about Black Lives Matters, they're trying to use the words of the Bible without the message of the Bible. They're trying to use the rhetoric of Scripture without the message of salvation and redemption and hope. And what is hope? It is that profound certainty that there is an empty tomb that Jesus came out of. And none of that is in the social justice movement, but they're trying to use the rhetoric. So for Raphael Warnock to come along and say that, through a commitment to helping others, we were able to save ourselves, that deviates so much from Christian orthodoxy that even the progressive church in America rejects that message because it doesn't actually help them advance their cause, where their cause is now to co-opt 2,000 years of Christian language about Scripture and no longer apply it to orthodoxy, but apply it to whatever their cause is. Warnock essentially gave up the game, that they don't really mean it, which is why he had to delete it. It also puts him in a terrible political position because who are the most faithful people to the church in America today? Black and Hispanic voters. And for Raphael Warnock to say something like this, it doesn't even have a home in the vast network of black churches in America. It doesn't have a home in the Hispanic churches of America. And he's a man who tried to claim credibility, pastoral credibility, in black and Hispanic churches in Georgia to get himself elected. And he's sabotaging his own message. He completely got off message on Twitter, which is why he had to delete that. It had nothing to do, as the media framed it, as, oh, well, he was just trying to minimize conservative criticism. No, it had everything to do with him exposing himself as a huckster and a fraud and casting doubt on his overall message. The media doesn't want to tell you that's why. The media will accept his excuse. But then the media's original framing of this was, who are you to tell Reverend Warnock he's committing heresy? Well, an actual Bible-believing Christian. That's who.
Politics, news, religion. Erick Erickson talks.
Hello there. It is Erick Erickson here. Glad to have you with me as we continue our rollout around the country. I won't bother you with the phone number, but if you want to reach out, you can always get me EW Erickson at Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. Instagram and Twitter are the ones that I most like. I like Instagram the most because I try not to be hyper political on Instagram and just kind of live life there. Gun ownership. It's soaring among Black Americans. In times of uncertainty, people want to be able to have the means to defend themselves. One law professor said, I don't particularly like to cite the Hill as a resource because I think they are way into clickbait, but this is a legit story. It jumps off to The Guardian, which is a progressive British outlet, but way more credible than the Hill. Janice Matthews, I assume by the asterisk next to her name, it means that they're changing her name to protect her in some way. Let's scroll to the bottom of the article and see, yes, the names of the new gun owners have been changed to protect their identities. Janice Matthews always knew she would be a gun owner someday. She was raised in Alabama, where her family members rarely left their homes unarmed. Still, after more than 3 decades in California, she wasn't in a rush to start shopping around at gun stores. Then the pandemic hit. Matthews started hearing rumors of food shortages and noticed store shelves emptied by shoppers panic buying everything from bullets to toilet paper. After her daughter moved out of their home, she was left with an empty nest and a lot of anxiety. I was thinking of what they predicted in the Bible, and I thought I would have to protect the little bit that I had, Matthews recalled. So one day in the spring of last year, she waited 6 hours in line outside a Northern California gun store to become one of the millions of Americans who became first-time gun owners in 2020. Americans bought a record number of firearms last year. An estimated 5 million people bought their first ever gun between March and August, according to the National Shooting Sports Foundation, a trade association, and the number continued to climb throughout the year. Black Americans saw the highest increase in new gun ownership of any demographic, with gun ownership up a staggering 58.2%. Though Black Americans have a multitude of reasons for buying a gun, some new gun owners told The Guardian about stress related to the pandemic. Others about the anxiety of seeing scores of armed white protesters rallying against lockdown orders or the election results. Many had a common experience in the process of obtaining one. They were met with apathy and in some cases disrespect from white gun store owners, gun club members, and at shooting ranges. The cold shoulder they received has pushed scores to join black gun clubs and seek training from black experts. That, my friends, is deeply unfortunate. That, my friends, is sad that they would do that. It's disappointing to me that people would be unwelcoming of new gun owners. Do you know what you call a gun owner in America? Republican. The Republicans need to have these people's back. They need to be welcoming of these people. They need to welcome and embrace new gun owners regardless of race, creed, religion. Because it is the Democrats who want to take their guns away from them now that they have them. This woman stood in line for 6 hours in California and went through the California bureaucratic red tape to get herself a gun. And the Democrats want to make it harder for her to get her next one. Because once you buy one gun is never enough. Let me just tell you, I thought I would be fine with one gun. No, sirree, Bob. In fact, I'm thinking I've got to go get a Benelli turkey sport shotgun because I'm going turkey hunting in a couple of weeks for the first time. And I think I may just need to go buy a new shotgun to be able to go do it. I think look. Can you turn down a shotgun? Can I turn down a Beretta Sport like my father-in-law has with virtually no recoil? Or the turkey shotgun? And I got to buy camo and stuff too for it. I'm really excited about going turkey hunting. I've never been. Philip and Charlie, who work with me, have a running bet that I'm not going to be able to sit still enough to kill a turkey. And I don't know what I'll do if I kill the turkey because, wild turkey's kind of gamey. You kind of got to soak it in milk. Maybe I'll give it to the guy and then it's his property. I'll let him deal with the turkey aftermath. I just want to go hunting. I've never been before. And that gives me an excuse to buy more camo and new guns. Everyone who buys guns wants more guns. Apparently it's like tattoos. My wife got a tattoo And now she just wants more tattoos. I don't understand why you would want to do that, but she does. But I guess it's kind of like buying guns, because once you buy one, you want to keep buying guns. I got Glocks, I got HKs, I got CZs, I got Berettas, I got Remingtons. More guns, they're a good thing. Well, Republicans need to embrace this demographic and grow their coalition. New gun owners tend to be Republicans. Time to embrace them. Hello there. It is Erick Erickson here. It is my show, and the phone number, I'll give it to you, but don't call it, is 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. You'll be able to call tomorrow. You'll be able to call and complain, among other things. Okay, so if you're just tuning in this morning, when I started the program this morning, I started by saying I wanted to give a shout out to went to Chick-fil-A this morning and I ordered y'all, I don't like with the exception of pizza, I don't like cheese on stuff. Just shut up. Just go with it. So I ordered a bacon, egg, and cheese biscuit with extra bacon and no cheese on it. And just got the standard meal with the hash browns and the like. And then I said, I got home and it wasn't my order. It was, I got the hash browns and I got the Dr. Pepper that I wanted. But I did not get my bacon and egg biscuit. I got a sausage biscuit in the order. So it was a walk-up order. So it was somebody on the inside had placed the order and it was a sausage biscuit. And he ordered it, a sausage, egg, and cheese with no egg and cheese, just the sausage, as opposed to, well, I have heard from the person. I'm sorry. I'm scrolling through an emails and I see this email in the subject line. I heard you talked about me on the radio. There's a guy named Michael. Michael got my biscuit and he knew it was mine because the last name, there's a little label on it for me saying me, and his was a walk-up order. So I didn't have his name, but he says it is him. And and he did order, he for the record, he ordered a sausage biscuit. He's not sure why they ring it up as a sausage, egg, and cheese without the egg and cheese. Well, people are listening. This guy, now he says he did not listen. He was complaining at the office that he got my biscuit. He knew who I was. And someone at the office said that he had heard me on the radio about it. It's a small world. It's a small world. Well, listen, I hope he enjoyed it. He apparently, well, didn't because it had the egg and the cheese, or it had the egg on it. But there you have it. All right. That makes you feel better. I personally, I'm sure none of you care. I find it very funny that this person has reached out. Now, we must proceed. I got to explain an esoteric concept to you that you need to understand. I'm going to try not to bore you with this. Under modern American law, particularly as it comes to software, there's a general rule, and the general rule is that software code is treated under copyright rules. The government over time changed the law, and software processes could be patented. So, for example, when Apple introduced the iPhone, one of the original things that you did is you swiped to unlock. Steve Jobs, when he unveiled the iPhone, showed the demo. You'd slide your finger across the bottom of the screen. There's a visible little arrow, and it would light up, moving across the screen, and you would swipe to unlock. And one of the things he said, well, he went through all the stuff. He says, boy, have we patented it. And this was a change in American law where you could patent software features. One of the downsides of this is it has led to a phenomenon of patent trolling, where you don't actually invent something useful, but you buy the patent from the person who did, and then you litigiously troll everyone and drive up the costs of doing business. You come up with an idea and you sue. So, for example, one of the things Apple did was you swipe your finger up the screen and the text scrolls in the way your finger went. And that was patented by Apple. The design of it was patented by Apple. Prior to this legal change in the late 90s that allowed all of these patents on software, you used copyright. And so Apple famously sued Microsoft for stealing the copyright to the look of a visual operating system, a GUI, they called it, a graphical user interface. And the courts ultimately ruled in Microsoft's favor that they did something very similar, but they used their own code. There have been other situations where people have taken snippets of code that someone else wrote and then built elaborate things around it. It's as if someone wrote the code for the steps, the front steps, and then someone used that code and built an entire house connected to those front steps. And so they used their code to build the entire house, the plumbing, the electrical system, the multi-story house, everything on the inside, but they borrowed your snippet of code that designed the steps. And courts have said, well, that's fair use. You didn't just build steps and say, hey, it's mine with their code. You built something entirely different, made more manifest and greater than just that code. Well, Oracle is a software company, and Oracle bought a company, Sun Microsystems, that invented something called Java. You're very familiar with Java. Java, you may not realize you're using it, but it involves graphical user interfaces, among other things. And Google took 11,000 lines of code from a Java interface. Now, we're talking 11,000 lines out of millions of lines of code, and then made something that became the Android operating system. It spun it off, essentially. Made something more glorious, made more manifest, made something more deeply elaborate than what Oracle itself had done, or what Sun Microsystems had done. A federal court ruled that it was copyright theft. The Supreme Court, in a 6-2 decision, has said, no, actually, this was fair use. A lot of conservatives, and let's be honest here, some conservative organizations were getting money from Oracle to attack Google. Some of them deeply hate Google because they feel like Google is a progressive menace. Some of them feel like Google is a monopoly, and so they were on the side against Google. So a lot of conservative commentary is actually opposed to Google. I myself want to break Google apart into multiple pieces. I think Google is a progressive menace to society. I think it is a monopoly, and its own employees believe that Google's algorithm can be used to silence diverse voices, but are perfectly happy using that algorithm to silence conservatives. I think Google is a dangerous company. But I don't think we should side with Oracle in this case. And the Supreme Court got it right. Clarence Thomas and Sam Alito wrote dissents, and I understand their dissents, but I think they're wrong here. Now, why do I think they're wrong? Software in this country, since we've gotten to the days where we use patents and aggressively punish each other for coming up with general ideas that someone says, well, I patented that, you can't use my idea. They're doing it more and more with software, and what we're seeing is a stifling of innovation. What we need to do in this country is go back to an era where you no longer patent software processes. The general rule before we allowed people to start patenting software processes was you could fairly use a small subset of someone else's code to make something different and more unique. What the Supreme Court essentially said is that Java had a code that allowed a visual user interface window, and Google built off of that and made the Android operating system. Sun Microsystems that came up with Java never had a cell phone operating system. This is something completely new and different, and it fairly used a snippet of code. The way it used to work is that you could build off of someone else's code, with the exception being if the code was solely designed and uniquely designed for a particular piece of hardware. So, for example, Apple's Macintosh. Apple controls both the hardware and the software. You cannot copy Apple's code to then run your code on a Macintosh, because Apple owns both the hardware and the software. But with Windows, for example, Windows operating systems can be run on any Windows compatible hardware with an Intel or an AMD chip. And so people could take parts of Windows code and they could not make an operating system, but they could make other software that used parts of Microsoft's code to make it possible then to run their software on top of the overall operating system. And it allowed an innovation in Windows operating systems. Apple allows people through the use of API, application programming interfaces, to build software that runs on top of Apple's operating systems. And you get all sorts of innovation until you get into, well, you swiped right, and I've got a patent on you can't swipe right, therefore I'm going to shut down your whole operating system, or I'm going to shut down your whole software enterprise. Allowing the patent trolls in has screwed up software in this country and hampered innovation. So the Supreme Court, it's being assailed by some conservative groups who hate Google because of its ruling in Google's behalf. But the overall actual litigation and process, it got to the right outcome, even if we all hate Google and think Google is a menace. The overall outcome of the Supreme Court case benefits innovation in this country. And frankly, it will allow other companies to innovate around Google without Google being able to stop them. There is a side problem to this that we got to discuss here. I used to be, and if Philip is listening and you're cutting up videos and stuff from all this stuff, here's one you need to do. I used to believe that if conservatives didn't like something on the internet, go build your own thing. It makes some sense. You don't like this website, go build your own website. You don't like this blog, go start your own blog. You don't like this app, go start your own app. But the Parler situation after the January 6th stuff on Capitol Hill shows that you can't really do that anymore. And it's been going on a little bit before then, and it's escalated since. You build your own app. Well, now the app stores, Google and Apple, say, well, you're not allowed in our app store. Well, you can't be on an iPhone unless you jailbreak an iPhone, which people don't want to do. So therefore, Parler is precluded from being on your iPhone because Apple controls the app store. So you can say, go build your own app, but if Apple doesn't let it in the store, it's a private company actually controlling the First Amendment. It's not the government doing it, it's Apple doing it. Or you do let Parler in, but then Amazon's web services says, well, you can't use our servers. So you've got to go use a foreign country's servers or some other less robust system because the wokes target Amazon and make Amazon throw you off. It's actually really damn hard now. You can't just go build your own thing. You've got to go build your own internet. And you can't build your own internet because ultimately you require access to the existing internet and the existing wires. You can't force a company to connect to your internet when there's already an internet. It becomes controlling. And what we're finding is that the wokes are using private companies to do what they can't get the government to do. And now you've got another decision in the Supreme Court that's come out where Clarence Thomas, in the concurrence of a case, is saying we may need to treat some of these big tech companies like common carriers, where a private company can discriminate, a private company can censor because the First Amendment doesn't apply to them. But if they're a common carrier, then the rules become a little more unique. And this was a case about Donald Trump blocking people on the internet, and the Supreme Court rendered it moot because the president was no longer the president and his account has been deleted from Twitter. And Thomas in his concurrence essentially says, how can Twitter delete the account of the sitting president of the United States? How can it discriminate against these people? And Thomas may be on to something here. Because as he points out, you could potentially, if the railroad won't let you cross the river on the train and the toll road company won't let you cross the toll road, well, you could, of course, swim across the river, but we do decide with common carriers you can't discriminate among Americans and say you can't cross the river unless you swim. we're going to have to come up with something. The Supreme Court, I think, got the Google Oracle case right because we should allow innovation through copyright. And patent trolls have made it very difficult to innovate in software in this country. But Thomas may be right in this other case that we're going to have to start doing something with big tech companies who are increasingly behaving as a private police force for the left in this country, censoring conservatives. For example, there's a growing movement to allow, for example, radio over the internet. Apple has a radio button. You will notice that Apple hasn't gone down the road of talk, except for NPR. Doesn't want to risk having a conservative like me on Apple, and that's fine. If Apple doesn't want me, that's fine. But what if they start blocking the podcasts? I mean, Alex Jones ran into this, and I'm not an Alex Jones fan. But when you've got tech companies that are blocking all access for you to be able to engage with a conservative as the woke police force of the left, the government at some point does have to get involved. When one side is so culturally dominant, it can use the private forces of the Fortune 500 to silence its critics. You're going to start seeing a lot of small government conservatives think government may need to be just a bit bigger. And if Fortune 500 companies are going to do this, don't be surprised when Clarence Thomas's concurrence becomes the dominant position of the Supreme Court, because the wokes controlling the Fortune 500 to censor people they don't like becomes a problem for all of us.
I really do like his opinion on things.
Erick.
Speaking of recipes, I've got a deal for you because the weather outside is gorgeous. It's time to fire up your grills. The Let's Go Grill package from Omaha Steaks. It's out today. It is their all-new package just for you. If you go to omahasteaks.com and you put Georgia in the search bar, you're going to save over 45%, and you're going to get 12 ultra juicy Omaha Steak burgers free. That is, are you paying attention here? You're going to get 4 pounds of burgers. To top it off, you're going to get $20 off your first order. The Let's Go Grill package, it includes 4 butcher cut fillets, 4 boneless pork chops, a pound of chicken breast, 4 kielbasa sausages, and a lot more. And you're going to get for free 12 burgers for free. Now, I need to listen. Omaha Steak sends me promo copy to highlight the deal, and it's 12 free Omaha Steak burgers. On your first order, you get $20 off at checkout. If you go to omahasteaks.com and you put Georgia in the search bar. But I gotta talk to you about their burgers. We eat a lot of burgers. If you follow me on Instagram, Sunday night at my house tends to be burger night. And I can go to the grocery store and I can get ground chuck. And I can make good burgers. I can season them well. By the way, when you're making burgers, don't salt the burgers until you're ready to put them on the grill. Sprinkle salt on the top. Why? If you put salt into the meat, it draws out the water and you get sausage style meat, and you get a too firm, dense patty. Don't salt the burger when you're mixing stuff together. Wait until after you form the patties. Well, the Omaha Steak burgers, 1, they're pre-formed, but 2, they're a great blend. They're not going to shrink up like your standard ground chuck on the grill, and they're so beefy and flavorful. I am a massive fan. My entire family loves Omaha Steak burgers. You can do smash burgers. If you've got a griddle, you can put them on the grill. They're not going to shrink up into little hockey pucks. They're good. And if you go to omahasteaks.com right now and you put Georgia in the search bar, you're going to get 12 free burgers. 12. It is the Let's Go Grill package. It is perfect for the summer. Have your friends over. You're going to get 45% off. You're going to get these burgers. omahasteaks.com. Put Georgia in the search bar. Such a good deal. Truly, their burgers are tremendous. All right. I thought this story was a joke. I had to look it up. It is not an April Fool's joke that has carried over into April. This is a real story. A Portland high school wanted to change its mascot. They had a Trojan mascot. No, not a condom, although it's Oregon, so you would not be shocked if it was. Nope, but an actual soldier. They wanted to get rid of their militaristic Trojan. And they decided an evergreen tree should be their mascot. It is the Ida B. Wells Barnett High School. Ida B. Wells, of course, is the famous reporter who she was a black activist and documented lynchings. And the school voted that the evergreen tree, very common in Oregon, should be the mascot. The teachers voted, the students voted, and they agreed. But there's a problem. The wokes got involved. And the wokes are concerned. The Portland Public Schools Board of Education director herself raised concerns that, trees were used for lynchings. And should we have this mascot? Now, never mind, it's not evergreen trees, because evergreen trees tend to actually have softer branches, and it was deciduous trees with large lower branches that were typically used for lynchings, not evergreen trees, but this has become a thing. And now they may have to keep their militaristic Trojan because the wokes are upset. They may use a tree, and trees were used for lynchings. It's not a joke.